You're sitting in the dark. The only light in the room is the cold glow of your phone screen. A text pops up from someone who genuinely loves you. Are you okay? Do you want me to come over? Your world is falling apart. Everything feels heavy, chaotic, and completely overwhelming. This is the exact moment you need a lifeline. But instead of typing help, you hesitate. You stare at the screen. And then you hit the power button. The screen goes black. You choose the silence. You choose to be completely, utterly alone. Society has a lot of names for this behavior. They call it being stubborn. They call it being cold, pushing people away, or just having a bad attitude. But underneath that silence, it's not a rejection of love. It's a primal, desperate survival mechanism. But why do we shut down like that? Why is it that the exact moment we need connection the most is the exact moment we fight the hardest to keep everyone out? Today, we aren't here to judge. We are going to unlock that door and step inside the mind of the person who disappears when it hurts the most. Because chances are, that person is you. But what does that silence actually feel like? When people talk about pushing others away, they usually describe it as an emotional decision, a conscious thought process. But if you've been there, you know that shutting down isn't just in your head. It is a deeply physical, somatic experience. When a massive crisis hits, when the grief, the panic, or the weight of failure finally catches up to you, your body reacts before your mind even has a chance to process it. It starts in your chest, a sudden suffocating tightness, like someone is sitting heavily on your ribs. The air in the room suddenly feels incredibly thick. Your limbs become heavy, as if your bones are suddenly made of wet concrete. Getting out of bed doesn't just feel sad, it feels physically impossible. Picking up your phone to reply to a simple message isn't just annoying, it hurts. Staring at the keyboard, trying to formulate the words, "I am fine, thank you," requires the exact same amount of metabolic energy as running a marathon. You look at the glowing screen, and your fingers simply won't move. You are completely drained, empty. You aren't choosing to be distant. Your nervous system has been hijacked. Biologically, your body has entered the freeze state of the fight, flight, or freeze trauma response. Your internal breaker box has tripped. When the circuit gets overloaded by too much pain, too much stress, or too many expectations from the outside world, the body literally pulls the plug to conserve its last remaining drops of energy. You isolate yourself because your body's screaming that any external input, a conversation, a question, even a warm hug, is a threat to your critically low battery. You don't have the physical capacity to hold space for someone else, because right now, you can barely hold space for yourself. To understand why your body reacts this way, why your nervous system treats a comforting hand as a terrifying threat, we have to look backward. We have to examine the hidden blueprint of how you learn to survive. In clinical psychology, there is a foundational framework known as attachment theory. It reveals that the way we navigate pain and crisis as adults is deeply wired into us by how our primary caregivers responded to our distress when we were infants. If your immediate reflex is to lock the door and disappear when your world is burning, it is highly likely your nervous system is operating on what is called an avoidant attachment style. Picture a young child. They are hurt, terrified, and crying out for comfort. But the response they receive isn't a warm, reassuring embrace. Maybe their caregiver is emotionally absent, chronically overwhelmed, or actively dismissive, telling them to simply stop crying and deal with it. Or perhaps they were just left alone to figure it out in an empty room. A child's brain is incredibly neuroplastic. It is constantly absorbing data to write the fundamental rules of survival. In those quiet, lonely moments, that child's brain learns a tragic, permanent lesson about the world. Relying on others leads to disappointment. Having needs makes you a burden. The brain brilliantly, but painfully, rewires itself. It decides that vulnerability is a profound danger. It learns to self-soothe in the shadows, believing that the only person it can fundamentally trust to handle the pain is itself. Fast forward 20 or 30 years. You are a grown adult facing a devastating life crisis, but when a friend reaches out to help, your brain doesn't see love. It flashes a blinding warning sign. Do not show weakness. Weakness will be punished. Lock down the system. But it's not just our early childhood experiences that wire us this way. It's the very water we swim in. If you grew up in Western society, particularly in America, you are handed a deeply flawed script about what it means to be strong. From a young age, we are spoon-fed the myth of the lone wolf. We glorify the relentless grind of hustle culture. We worship the self-made success story, the rugged individual who pulls themselves up by their own bootstraps against all impossible odds. We are taught time and time again that true resilience is achieved entirely on our own. Society takes emotional isolation, dresses it up in a suit, and calls it independence. It hands us a shiny badge of honor for never needing anyone, for swallowing our tears and for grinding through the darkest pains silently. So, what happens when your world actually falls apart? What happens when the unbearable weight of a sudden layoff, a devastating breakup, or a profound physical burnout crushes you to the floor? Your traumatized brain is already telling you that vulnerability is dangerous. But now, your culture is whispering something equally toxic in your other ear. If you ask for a lifeline, you're weak. If you cannot fix this yourself, you are a fundamental failure. This is the cultural trap. You begin to believe that leaning on a friend's shoulder is a pathetic admission of defeat in a society that only rewards the relentlessly strong. We have built a world that actively encourages us to suffer in silence, applauding our stoicism right up until the exact moment we completely shatter. When we see someone retreating into the shadows during a difficult time, we often misdiagnose what they're actually feeling. We assume they are just deeply sad, or perhaps angry at the unfairness of the world, or maybe consumed by guilt over whatever went wrong. But the driving force behind the desperate act of pushing others away is an emotion far more destructive, far more paralyzing, and completely silent. It is the crushing weight of shame. In psychology, we draw a massive, critical distinction between guilt and shame. Guilt is an action-oriented emotion. Guilt says, I did a bad thing. I made a terrible mistake. Guilt leaves room for repair. It allows you to apologize, fix the error, ask for help, and move forward. But shame is an identity-oriented emotion. Shame looks in the mirror and whispers, I am a bad thing. I am the mistake. When a massive crisis hits, when you lose that job you tied your entire identity to, when your finances collapse, or when the person you gave your heart to decides they no longer want you, you don't just feel like you lost something external. You experience a catastrophic, terrifying drop in your core human value. You feel fundamentally flawed. You feel ugly, unlovable, and completely broken. So when your phone buzzes and you see a text from a friend saying, "Hey, I'm here for you. Please let me help," you know they mean well. But in your mind, surrounded by the suffocating wreckage of your own life, your internal monologue is screaming. It's saying, I am a toxic, miserable mess right now. Everything I touch falls apart. My friends' lives are already hard enough, already exhausting enough. Why would I drag the people I love into this absolute darkness? I am nothing but a heavy, exhausting burden. And here lies the ultimate, heartbreaking paradox of the person who pushes you away. They aren't isolating because they don't care about you. Often they are isolating because they love you so desperately. They are actively trying to protect you from the radioactive fallout of their own depression. In their traumatized mind, their pain is a contagion. Their very presence is a drain on your happiness, so they become their own quarantine zone. They lock the doors, shut the blinds, and trap themselves inside with their own demons, firmly believing that keeping you out is the ultimate act of love. They choose to bleed out alone in the dark, just so they don't stain your hands. Have you ever noticed that when people's lives are violently spiraling out of control, they suddenly become obsessed with governing the smallest, most insignificant details? When a massive crisis strikes, when the company goes bankrupt, when the sudden diagnosis is confirmed, or when the divorce papers are finally signed, human beings experience a terrifying, paralyzing loss of autonomy. You cannot control the collapsing economy. You cannot control the disease in your body. You cannot control the person who packed their bags and decided they no longer wanted to stay. The external world has suddenly proven itself to be a chaotic, cruel, and completely unpredictable place. To prevent a total psychological collapse in the face of this absolute helplessness, the traumatized human ego frantically scrambles to find something, anything, it can still manage. And what is the absolute easiest thing to control in a chaotic, spinning world? Distance. The physical and emotional space between you and other people. By flatly refusing your help, by ignoring your desperate phone calls, by actively pushing you away and deadbolting the bedroom door, they are aggressively clawing back a tiny microscopic fraction of power. It creates a powerful, albeit completely fake, psychological safety net. Their subconscious is whispering a bitter paradox. The universe might be entirely destroying me right now, and I can't stop it. But at least I am the one who decides who gets a front row seat to watch. I am the sole gatekeeper of my own misery. It is nothing but an illusion of control. But you have to understand, when you feel like you're drowning at the bottom of a raging, pitch-black ocean, even an illusion feels like a solid life raft. Now let's step back into that dark room. Let's look inside the brain of someone in the middle of a catastrophic crisis when you, with the absolute best intentions in the world, walk in and softly say, "Let's talk about it. Tell me how I can help." Why do they immediately snap at you? Why do they get fiercely angry, turn their back, and aggressively demand that you leave them alone? It isn't malice, and it certainly isn't because they don't value your friendship. In clinical psychology and neuroscience, this terrifying explosive reaction is known as emotional flooding. Imagine your brain is a high-performance computer. It has a specific, limited amount of RAM, a finite amount of processing power. On a normal average day, if you open 3 or 4 heavy programs, it runs perfectly fine. You can manage your job, your relationships, and a minor daily inconvenience without a single glitch. But now, imagine a crisis hits, and you're suddenly forced to open 80 massive, high-definition video files at the exact same time. What happens? The cooling fan starts screaming. The cursor freezes in place. The entire system completely locks up, and the computer violently crashes. You can't even move the mouse. When a person is drowning in a deep, agonizing crisis, their sympathetic nervous system is violently activated. Their brain is utterly flooded with stress hormones. Cortisol and adrenaline are aggressively pumping through their veins, preparing them for a physical war that doesn't actually exist. Because of this massive chemical storm, their prefrontal cortex, the advanced, logical, conversational part of the brain responsible for reasoning, empathy, and processing language, literally shuts down to conserve energy for basic, primal survival. When you approach them in this paralyzed state with logical advice, probing questions, or even warm emotional sympathy, you aren't throwing them a lifeline. You are accidentally forcing a crashing, smoking computer to process brand new, highly complex data. You are asking them to not only manage the chaotic, unbearable hurricane of their own emotional state, but to also manage your active concern for them. Their frozen brain has to suddenly calculate, oh no, now my friend is worried. Now I have to reassure them. Now I have to find the exact right words to articulate my agonizing pain in a way that makes sense to them. It is simply too much bandwidth. It's too many tabs open at once. They violently push you away because their neurological system is flashing a giant red warning. System overload. Abort. They desperately need the silence, not because they hate you, but because their exhausted brain requires total, absolute sensory deprivation just to reboot. Let's shift our focus for a moment to the person standing helplessly on the outside of that locked door. If you're watching someone you love actively push you away, your immediate, agonizing instinct is to break the door down and aggressively save them. In Western culture, we are deeply conditioned to be fixers. When we see a problem, especially when it involves someone we deeply care about, our immediate reflex is to offer rapid-fire solutions, give unsolicited advice, or desperately try to cheer them up. We say things like, "Look on the bright side," or "Here is exactly what you need to do right now." But here is the harsh, awakening truth. Your desperate need to fix their pain is often more about soothing your own anxiety than it is about actually helping them. You hate feeling helpless, so you urgently take action. However, when you force your well-intentioned advice onto a nervous system that is already completely flooded and crashing, you are not throwing them a life raft. You are handing a drowning person a heavy iron anchor. You are demanding that they process your solutions, manage your anxiety, and reassure you that your help is working. It requires a massive amount of emotional labor that they simply do not possess. Your burning desire to forcefully pull them into the light is exactly what terrifies them into retreating deeper into the dark. Good intentions, when applied without profound psychological understanding, quickly become the very pressure that breaks them. Healing from cynicism doesn't mean becoming blindly trusting overnight. It means learning to loosen the armor, piece by piece. It means allowing yourself to experience small moments of trust again, without demanding certainty. The goal is not perfection, but awareness. To notice when your past is speaking louder than your present. To pause before shutting something down. To let something good exist, even if just for a moment. Because the truth is, your cynicism was never your enemy. It protected you when you needed it most, but you don't have to live there forever. You can choose to feel again, slowly, carefully, on your own terms. And if this message resonated with you, if you felt seen, or if you finally understood someone in your life, leave a comment and share your story. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep exploring the deeper layers of the human mind together. Thank you for watching.